Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you can hear me. If you could give me a thumbs up for sound and for my presentation as well. Let me know if you can see my screen. Awesome, seeing some thumbs going up. Wonderful. Well, welcome to the Back to School Summit. This is day 3, and I'm very excited for us to talk about assessment today, specifically how backwards design can be, or some could argue should be, adopted in your assessment practices. While we wait for others to join, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, share your role, where you're joining us from, and one thing in your classroom that you absolutely can't live without. I'm always curious about that question myself. What was that item for you, Desiree, when you were in the classroom?
Ooh, honestly, I think I did a lot of mindfulness with my students, and so I had a little chime for breathing. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, it came in really handy when
Yeah.
it came for like, hey, it's after recess, and this was,
Oh, that's very cool.
primary. If other primary teachers are out there, you know what that's like after recess.
Oh, yeah. Sounds very zen, just to
Yeah,
recenter everyone. Yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it wasn't just for them, it was for me as well.
For you as well.
Honestly, it
I
was mostly
love
for
that.
me.
Natalie, in my classroom, I couldn't live without lots of whiteboards on the wall, individual whiteboards for students. Yes, love a good whiteboard.
hmm
Um, I remember when I had a chalkboard. I don't think they make those anymore, like those little ones, individual ones.
Ooh.
Melanie, one thing I can't live without are jokes to start the day. Oh, I like that. Start the day on
hmm
a happy note. That's very nice. All right, let's keep those introductions going in the chat. What's one thing in your classroom that you absolutely can't live without? While you do that, let's go through a few housekeeping items. Yes, all sessions will be recorded and sent to you by email. And if you're looking for closed captions, you can actually enable those on the Zoom bar. There should be a show captions button. Otherwise, you can click on the more button instead, and you should find that link, that button there. For questions, we are going to be using the Q&A box instead of chat, but we will be using the chat box as you just saw for intros and discussions, and make sure that the session is as lively and interactive as possible. As for the survey, we will be triggering that at the end of the session today. When you exit the Zoom, you will see a link pop up. So please, please, please let us know how we did, what you like to see in the future. That does help us improve these events for you and make them as relevant as possible. If you can't get to it today, that's okay. That will be included in the follow-up email as well. Let's see if there are other answers in the chat here. Can't live without my pocket microscopes. Oh, what? I didn't even know they
Mm.
made those. That's awesome. I can't live without a quote a day to share with my students on kindness, gratitude, etc. That's very nice. I like those answers. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody. Let me introduce myself really quickly. My name is Tatiana. I am the Education Services Manager here at SpacesEDU. Before coming onto the team, I spent years as an academic advisor where I basically help students get from point A to point B. That experience taught me the value of a well-designed plan, essentially. And since joining the Spaces EDU team, I've had the opportunity to work with incredible educators. And in the past 3 years that I've been here, I've seen firsthand how effective assessment can completely transform a classroom. And I'm really excited for us to share some of those insights today and learn from each other. That's the ultimate goal here. All right, a quick poll before we get started to start with level setting and understand where everyone is at in their Spaces EDU journey. I'm going to trigger the poll right now. Should be visible on your screen there. I'm also curious to find out if any of you already use backwards design in your lesson planning or in your teaching practice in general. So first of all, how familiar are you with Spaces EDU? We've been asking that question for the past 3 days here during the summit just to understand who our audience is. And second question there is on backwards design and whether or not you already adopt this in your teaching practice. And if you said yes, what's one part of the backwards design process you find most effective? There are 3 steps, hint, hint, to backwards design. So which step is your favorite and why? Let us know in the chat. As for the results, I'm seeing a split here. Most of us are intermediate level with Spaces EDU, so we have some experience, which is great. That tells me that you've already done at least one training or a learning module and understand the basics because we will be going over the assessment features today. So that is important. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, no worries. You can always go back to a previous recording and familiarize yourselves with the platform. As for whether or not you use backwards design in your teaching practice, it is a split. 6 said yes and 5 said no. And hopefully we can convert some people today or at least consider it in the future. All right, I'm just going to end the poll here and share those results with you. But before we dive into this session today, I wanted to start with a quick story about my own experience as a student, because it shaped how I think about assessment and learning today. I went to a self-directed high school here in Toronto. Actually, before we even get into that, has anyone heard of the term self-directed learning before? Is this, or at least as a concept? I'm just gonna Yeah, some thumbs. Okay, awesome. Right. So you might be asking yourselves, what does that even look like? I think it probably sounds like an unstructured setup for a teenager, but it was actually one of the most structured learning environments I've experienced. So what we're looking right now at is a unit. Since we're explaining up front, and there were learning experiences we could choose from. Things like peer discussions, readings, or attending seminars, and even the rubrics were included. So I always knew what success looked like as a student. And looking back now at going down memory lane, I realized this was backwards design in action. The, the educators didn't just ask us students to complete those tasks, they helped us understand the why behind our learning. And I could see how each experience connected to a goal and how, reflection and evidence helped me show what I had learned throughout each unit. So that idea, planning with the end in mind, is what we're exploring today. We'll essentially look at how Spaces EDU can support you and your students in making that process intentional and flexible, and most importantly, authentic. Now I want us to take a quick trip back in time. Think for a moment about your own experience as a student. Drop a thumbs up in the chat or as a reaction if you relate to this question. I'm already seeing some thumbs go up. Did you ever sit in a class and wonder, why am I even learning this? Yeah, see, yep. I still remember asking myself that same question in grade 11 functions. I was wondering when I would ever use a scientific calculator in the real world. And spoiler alert, I haven't touched one since the 11th grade. So I think most of us can agree here that we've been through that before and wondering why we are being taught certain content and its relevance in our futures. Now let's shift gears this time. Let's go back to the present. I want you to think about your own journey as a teacher. Again, throw a thumbs up in the chat or as a reaction. Have you ever looked at a textbook or pre-existing curriculum and felt the pressure to cover all the content just because it was there in the textbook? Seeing some thumbs going up, sure that sounds very familiar, and most teachers I speak to feel this exact pressure. It seems like the pressure to cover everything is like a constant battle in the classroom. Um, and if any of those questions resonated with you, you're certainly not alone. It's clear there's a lot at play when it comes to designing effective units. Now, I couldn't help myself and share this Michael Scott scene from The Office because, in my mind, it perfectly captures the feeling many of us have experienced in not just our learning, but in maybe in our teaching journeys too, right? We're meticulously following a curriculum or we're creating what we think are engaging activities. We have a plan, we're executing it, but then when we finally get to the end of that unit, we realize our assessments don't actually align with what we are teaching or what we taught, or students don't truly understand the why, or we just simply run out of time. And really, it's that feeling of having a plan, but missing the deeper purpose or completely missing the mark, right? This is where backwards design or backwards planning, and those terms are pretty interchangeable, comes in. It's the framework that helps us move from I had no idea what to do to truly knowing exactly what to do to achieve our desired learning outcomes. And here are some guiding questions that might help you with that process. First of all, do formative learning activities and lessons match the skills and content that's needed to be successful in the summative assessment? I think we often forget that the formative and summative assessments are intended to be complementary. The former should help the student be successful in the latter. And do students know what they're learning and why they're learning it? On a similar note, do we know why we're teaching it? Both parties should understand the why, and students should definitely know the what as well. And finally, how can we as teachers make sure that our unit design is intentional? I've learned from so many of you educators that for assessment to be truly effective, it has to be intentional. We can't just slap a test on at the end. We have to build that purpose in from the moment we start designing a new unit. So, what is backwards design? It's not a new concept. It was actually popularized by educators and authors Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe in their 1998 book, Understanding by Design. They created a framework for planning lessons by starting at the end and then working backwards. I mentioned earlier it's a three-step process. We start with the learning outcomes that matter most. So think of your big ideas, skills. For example, maybe we want students to understand the stages of the water cycle and its importance. Then we determine what evidence will show us students are getting there. This is where the summative assessment comes into play. Students will create, for example, a labeled diagram or model of the water cycle and explain each stage orally. And then after that, and only then, we design the experiences, the tasks, the activities that support our assessment, essentially the learning experiences and our instruction. For example, again, students can conduct simple evaporation or condensation experiments and discuss the water cycle's impact, right? So those are just some examples there. These three steps of backwards design help us move from reactive to intentional. Traditional lesson planning tends to be more reactive. I think we can all agree on that. And it's focused more on what needs to be taught, the content. It often starts with like the activities or the content itself, and assessment is something that's figured out later once teaching is done, and it tends to be summative. While backwards design, on the other hand, is deeply intentional. It begins by asking, what do I want students to truly understand, and how will I know they've learned it as well? So every step is purposeful with learning experiences chosen to basically support long-term goals, not just short-term content coverage. All right, so now let's take a look at how you can connect backwards design with assessment on Spaces EDU. For step one, you're going to ask yourself, based on the big idea or overall understanding of your unit, what standards will you be covering? So once you've established this is where Spaces EDU comes in, and it will be your best friend for planning and curricular visibility. I'm going to go into my class right now to show you all of that in action. So hopefully you can see my class now. I know my connection seems to be a bit laggy today, but where I would like us to start here is curriculum tags. I always stress this in my trainings and my conversations with our educators. Curriculum tags are absolutely necessary. Otherwise, assessment can't be made possible in your account. So that's where you want to start your assessment journey here in Spaces EDU by going into the assessment tab and then managing your tag sets. If this is your very, very first time doing this, then you won't have any tag sets in your account. So you'll have to actually click on this blue button here and then do a search. I would recommend doing it by province and by state. That seems to be the easiest way to find information. I'll just go to British Columbia here, and you'll see all subject areas. And essentially, you're going to select the subject area that you want to perhaps assess in SpacesEDU, and then the corresponding grade level. So once you do this, you can add the set officially, and you're essentially repeating the same steps for all subject areas that you like to have access to here in SpacesEDU. So that's the first step. And from there, once you have added those curriculum tag sets, you have the option to select and basically pin priority curricular competencies, standards, or learning goals for a unit or even a reporting period. You would do this in the Spaces tab and then through the feed. I want you to pay attention to the right side panel here under tags and proficiencies. You'll notice that I have pinned 3 tags already. So these are the 3 curriculum tags that I'm focusing on for unit on oral storytelling. If you are going to be adding those pin tags for the first time, there should be a plus button there visible in your account. I'm just going to edit this to show you that process. So you can browse through your existing tag sets here and then just select them from your list and click that check mark so that it basically updates those pin tags for you. That helps keep everyone focused and ensures alignment across your posts, your assessments, and again, highlights curricular visibility. That's the second, I guess you could technically second step. And then where I want us to take us, want us to go into is the Spaces tab. And one space that I wanted to highlight here is the one-to-one space. In case you weren't familiar with that feature, it is a private space between you, the educator, and the student, and you can also grant families access to that space. So it's perfect for assessment. You can throw in student work in there, assess it, with assign those curriculum tags, and then apply proficiencies accordingly. And all of that can be kept in a safe place where only you and the student have access. So one way you could approach this is either have a main learning space for your students, which is what I have here, and that includes all subject areas and all units. Alternatively, if you wanted to do a one-to-one space that is unit specific or subject specific, that's also possible. You would create a new space here by clicking on the big blue button here in the bottom right corner. And then we're going to select the one-to-one space, hit next. By default, the system will just check all your students. That's perfect. That's what I want. I'm going to hit next and customize these sections here. So in the description, I recommend putting in your expectations or what the objectives are for that space. That's a great reminder for yourself and also for your students. If you scroll down just a little bit here, you'll see a media section. So that allows you to include up to 10 media files. This could be resources for your students that would support maybe their documentation or their learning with this specific unit. So we can attach, let's say, a file here. I'm going to include a checklist and a rubric. Upload these two PDFs, and I'm going to save. There we go. So all of that is included. I have one set up for each student. But by default, the space is hidden. So that gives you some time if you're not ready yet to share this new learning environment, you can do so at your own pace. So that means it helps with planning. You can create a one-to-one space for different units and then toggle on visibility at any point during the school year. But if I'm ready to share this with students and families, I can click the review settings link right here, make it active, and then family access with visibility and comments too, and we can hit save. Now my students and families have access to this through their accounts.
Tatiana, I've got a couple of questions here.
Yes.
So Natalie asks, when I move to another unit and have new standards that I'm focusing on, can I change out my pinned tags?
Yep, absolutely. You can do that directly from the space itself. As you can see, that right side panel is visible. You can go back to the feed, and then you can click the edit button, deselect those those previous tags, and then opt for new ones. Let's say French, like that. And then you would hit save again and apply the same practice from unit to unit.
Thanks, Tatiana. I have another question in the Q&A section. Vicky asks, when I pin a tag on the right side, does that become visible for students when they're in their one-to-one space? Or is it only a feature that's available to the teacher?
I believe it is visible to students, but let's do here just a double check. I'm going to go back into the main spaces tab and switch over to my student account here. And we can confirm if that is the case. Oh, okay. So in the one-to-one space, it is not there, but let's see if it's in the feed as well. Okay, so it is in the feed, and I'm wondering now if it's invisible in the space that we just created because there is no content that has been tagged yet. So I'm assuming once you are tagging the posts and applying those proficiencies, it would be visible for that student.
That's all the questions. Thanks, Tatiana.
Thanks, Desiree. All right, let's jump back into my teacher account. Thanks, Natalie, for confirming. Awesome. Okay, let's head back into the slides here. Now that we've covered the first step of backwards design, I do want you to think about what standards you will be covering in your first unit and whether or not you'd pin those curriculum tags. Do you think that would be useful? Let us know in the chat. I'm sure maybe some of us are not even thinking about our first unit, so I do understand that. But I would maybe jot that down in a notebook and think about that later, but just know that that is a very useful feature here that you have access to in your account. Okay, so for step 2, you're going to ask yourself, what will I accept as evidence of understanding and learning? Essentially, what will be your summative assessment? Now, for this step, there are a myriad of ways you can utilize SpacesEDU, but we're going to take a look at how a student might share evidence of learning during an oral storytelling unit. I'm just going to head back into my class again. All right. And the space that I want to head into is actually the storyteller's circle. And we're going to take a look at this post that Malin created. So for the unit in question, our big summative assessment was for students to perform an original story. We were looking for them to show off their understanding of narrative structure, character development, and especially that engaging vocal delivery. So our standards focus on things like clear plot progression, expressive voice, and really captivating their audience. So here, Malin, she posted this fantastic video of her story and the great cedar tree right here in our storytellers circle group space. And this post perfectly captures the product of her learning and her culminating oral storytelling performance. You can literally see and hear how she uses her voice in that video, her gestures, her pacing, and it all directly addresses those performance standards we set. And this is why SpacesEDU is just the perfect tool for capturing this kind of authentic multimedia evidence. You get to see and you get to hear the complete performance. Now, a quick note that I wanted to mention here. You might notice that I didn't assess this post directly in the group space. And that's because if I did, it would apply to everyone else in the group, and that wouldn't be accurate for Malin's individual performance. So instead, I popped over into the growth book, which can be found in the assessment tab here. And what I did from there is created an assessment entry for that performance right here. Oral storytelling unit, this is the final performance. And I use the same curriculum tag, so those standards that I'm assessing, and I provided Malin's proficiencies here directly on that growth book. So here we see Malin absolutely rocked her assessment, but you might be wondering what got her there, what got her to that level of proficiency. Her journey actually involved several really important formative learning activities, and SpacesEDU was instrumental in documenting many of those steps along the way. I want to take you back here into a different space now. Early in the unit, we focused on practicing vocal delivery and timing. And this is something that students would document in their one-to-one space, so that private learning environment. Maylin made multiple audio recordings of herself practicing, her story, and alongside each audio clip, she included a brief written reflection, noting what she felt, how she did, and what she wanted to improve on. So this gives me valuable insight into her self-assessment process and how she's iteratively practicing, right? And it's truly a documentation of her growth in real time, all without the pressure of a public audience, etc. And as her teacher, I could listen to her audio. I could provide descriptive feedback and really track her progress, her individual progress through those proficiencies here on those curriculum tags that we're prioritizing. So you might have noticed that the colors kind of changed as she progressed from post to post. Um, so here we have orange and then slowly making our way up to yellow and then eventually green here. Then before the final performance, so that post in the group space, students really had to dig into structuring their stories. So we use actually a class-based activity for this. So I'm going to go back here into the class space. And I created an activity here where students would share their story planning and their outlines. It could be a text, it could be a quick drawing here, a short audio explaining their plot points. And then we jumped into peer feedback. Let me just expand these comments for you. And so peers could write their feedback directly into this posted activity, as you can see here. And they provided constructive suggestions on character development or even cool plot twists that Malin could include in her story. So this allowed for immediate collaborative feedback and gave Malin opportunities to actually refine her story based on her peers' insights before that big summative performance, and also adapt any sort of feedback that I, as the educator, provided to her as well. And now, what about, so we're looking at the formative learning that takes place in Spaces EDU, but what about those moments that didn't actually happen and get documented here? It could be maybe a hands-on character design sketch, or maybe we had a classroom discussion about effective storytelling techniques. That's where you would go back to the growth book and connect all those forms of learning and create an assessment entry. So you're able to document assessment that doesn't necessarily require documentation. So these would be your quick, rapid assessment entries here. So in the assessment tab, you can go directly into the growth book, and to create a new entry, you click on the blue button in the bottom right corner. And then you would simply give it a name or title, and then the curriculum tags that you're focusing on. Remember the pin tags, they appear at the very top here of the curriculum tags list. So it does give you easy access. And from there, you can create that entry. So as, let's say, this discussion is happening in class, you can walk around the classroom, listen to your students speak, and then provide those, proficiency levels based on your observations, so on and so forth. Um, all right, so any questions about the growth book?
I see a question from Vicky. How do you manage time with devices for every student to post and reflect on each step or attempts leading up to the final performance? Our school has shared devices and we don't always get to use them multiple times each week.
Okay, that's a really great question. I know that access to technology is definitely a limiting factor here. But from my conversations with educators as well, is that don't feel pressured to get everything documented on Spaces EDU, and you can try also any sort of group activities where students would be able to maybe take videos of each other throughout those sessions. Um, but yes, I do agree that limited technology time does play a factor here. Is there
Thanks, Tasha. Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
no
go ahead.
worries. Is there a fill down option available, Control D, for filling into the growth book? There is a keyboard shortcut, actually, Kevin. So let's take a look at those shortcuts in the top right corner. So here we can see our proficiency scales. This is actually intended to match BC's, but the shortcuts are written here for us. So now that we know what those shortcuts are, we can close this and then we can click on any cell. So double click until you see this blue border. And then you would use your keyboard. Let's say it's for insufficient evidence. When I press I, that's what appears as a proficiency. And then I can navigate from cell to cell using the arrow keys on my keyboard, left to right, down and up, and then apply those proficiencies like that. To delete, I can press backspace. So this would be a quick way to do that. Any other questions on the growth book?
I don't see any questions on my
No?
end.
Okay. All right. So basically what we just saw is that posts and activities, they kind of work hand in hand. The posts captures the polished, maybe student product, while the activity can be used to invite planning and deep reflection. And then the growth book finally keeps your assessment ongoing and super flexible. It's great for reporting as well. Let's say all that data that you're gathering and collecting, because it supports responsive teaching, even when you don't have complete digital evidence for every student. It lets you track how students are doing in real time, like we just saw today with the quick assessment entry. So you're able to still have that assessment data available in your Spaces EDU class.
Tatiana,
Mhm.
I have one more question from Vicky. She asks, is the growth book mainly for keeping track of assessment like a grade book? And does it get shared with students on their posts?
Yes. So to answer your question, the growth book is essentially proficiency-based grade book, and it does not get shared with students on their posts. This is only available and accessible to educators from your own account. And Shannon is right. There is a bulk apply proficiencies option here. So just click on this button to explore that option.
Thanks, Tatiana.
No problem. Okay, let's head back into our presentation. Again, thinking about your first unit that you're going to design for the new school year, so after we just saw how Malin's journey was captured, what is one small step you could take in your first unit to start experimenting with Spaces EDU to document both the product and the process of student learning? I think we can all agree that is the beauty of Spaces EDU, is that we have access to the product and the process of our students here. So I want you to reflect on that and write that down in your notebooks and consider that for later. All right, so last thing I want to show you is another tool you can use to inform your teaching and assessment, and that is the proficiency report. This can be used to help you plan learning experiences, but also support the learning process altogether. Let's jump back into our class here. The proficiency report is um, accessible through the assessment tab, but if you have the growth book opened, it is next to it here on in the top navigation bar as another tab. So just click on that to display some information for you. This is the proficiency report, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it is a fantastic tool that displays each curriculum tag that has been applied to posts in the feed, um, on activities in the growth book, and the corresponding proficiency levels assigned for each student. Basically, your one-stop shop to view all assessment data across your Spaces EDU class. So you're able to actually filter the view here and be a bit more focused. So maybe you want to focus on a student specifically, or if you want to take a look at those priority tags, we can filter by tags, subject area, or grades if we're teaching a split class. The pin tags that we are focusing on are actually showing up here as the first three columns, which is great for us, but that is available in the filtering capabilities. And if we wanted to take a look, let's say at Mayland here, we can find her row and take a peek into the number of corresponding assessments for that specific curriculum tag, and then a number of proficiencies applied. So during formative learning, if let's say I notice that most of these, like we're looking at the bar here, these are orange, which means that they're at an emerging level. Um, I would ask myself if I should move to my summative and just hope, maybe they'll get it. Or perhaps I can stop, pause, and reflect and see where the gaps might be in their learning and understanding of those standards. In fact, if you click on this box right here, it takes you to a feed where you'll see all of those posts, those corresponding posts are on here, so you get a full picture of their progress. And if there are any growth book entries associated with this tag, there should be a banner at the very top here. It will let you know how many assessments don't have an associated post. So this would be activities that haven't been posted yet and growth book entries as well. Another way you might use a proficiency report, for example, if after your summative assessment, you see that students haven't met proficiency, you could ask yourself if maybe should you be assuming that this standard will be covered in another unit, or perhaps you should consider reteaching and reassessing students. So finding those opportunities, and really the assessment data that lives here is very rich and valuable in your own decision making when it comes to your instruction and moving on from unit to unit. So definitely recommend exploring this tool if you haven't yet in your own SpacesEDU journey. And again, just to remind you, you can only explore this if you're applying those curriculum tags and assigning those proficiency levels. Let me pause here in case we have any questions about the proficiency report.
I don't see anything in the Q&A
No?
or in the chat.
Okay. All right. We can move on.
Ooh, Shannon says, can you narrow down dates?
Dates. Can you narrow down dates? So currently there are no filters for dates. I can note that down for our product team and pass that along as a product feature request. And that will be put under consideration, basically. So if you have any sort of feedback or ideas when it comes to any feature, not just a proficiency report, we do highly recommend communicating that with us, whether it's through the public roadmap or even in the chat when you're speaking to customer support. And yeah, just keep sharing those and get your friends to share as well. Okay,
Thanks, Tatiana.
no problem. I'm just going to take note of that right now and do that later. All right. Uh, so promise we're almost done. We have about 15 minutes left. All right, so now that you've seen the proficiency report, how do you think it might guide you in making adjustments to your own teaching in real time? Again, no pressure to share that with us now, but definitely something to think about throughout the year as you're assessing on the platform and start to regularly use it in your own teaching and assessment practices. All right, to recap, backwards design, what is it? It's a simple three-step process for intentional teaching. You start with the why, so defining your desired learning outcomes. Then you move on to determine acceptable evidence, so designing your assessments to gather evidence of that learning. And then finally, you plan your learning experiences, and only then, you're able to build those activities and instruction. So this framework moves us away from simply covering content like we talked about earlier and empowers us to create purposeful, effective learning experiences for our students. And since you've seen how easy it is to apply these steps in SpacesEDU, I want to motivate you to try it out for your next unit in this new school year and see it for yourself. Are there any questions before we wrap things up?
I don't see any
No?
questions on my end. Natalie just shared that I like how it can have you focus on a single standard instead of thinking that you need to have students redo an entire assessment.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that was for the proficiency report question, very specifically. Thanks, Natalie.
Oh, thanks, Nat. All right, before we say goodbye, I just wanted to do another shameless plug here for a final session for the summit. And this one is on portfolios that power future readiness. My lovely colleague Lisa Stevens will be running this session at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, so in about an hour. There's still time for you to sign up, so go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen there. And I'm also going to share the link to the sign up page here in the chat. So hopefully we can see you there. Otherwise, sign up and we'll send you the recording. Other than that, I just want to take a moment here to thank you so much for joining us at this session. I know you could have been anywhere else and you decided to spend an hour with us today. So really grateful for your presence, for your participation, collaboration, and we would love to hear your feedback. I've shared the link to the form in the chat. We have the QR code also available on the screen if you want to scan that, or just simply do the survey on the way out, and I'll send it in a follow-up email as well. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope to see you very soon.